Hi, and welcome to A Focus On. My name is Wanda Borland, and we have today in the studio a very special guest, Carol Voisin. Thank you so much for being here today, Carol.
Oh, well, thank you for the invitation.
Today, our focus is going to be on Carol Voisin, her early life. Many of us know Carol from her political activities in the city. Carol, didn't you also run a campaign?
National campaign. Ran against Walden. So it was the second district, second congressional district in 2006.
2006, okay. You've been on the Ashland City Council for how many terms?
2 terms, 8 years, 2008 to 2016.
And you are currently running for Ashland City Council,
Correct.
Position 4.
Correct.
Yeah. But today I'd like to take this opportunity to find out a little more about your early years, what has made you the person that you are today. First of all, Carol, I'd like to know where you were born.
I was born in Colby, Kansas, and that is western Kansas. It's 90 miles over the border, over the Colorado-Kansas border on I-70.
How long did you live there?
My parents, we lived there for, I think it was a year. And then my parents moved to, because they needed jobs, moved to Chicago, Illinois. Wow. And they lived there, I think, for about 5 or 6 years. My sister was born there. So there were 2 of us. And then they decided to come back to Denver because my dad got a job with the Packard Motor Company. They made great cars. They made airplane engines, superb airplane engines and cars that were just, they never wore out. That's why they went out of business.
Oh. Then was the rest of your childhood spent in Colorado?
It was in Aurora, Colorado, which is a suburb. We all know it's a suburb of Colorado, and it was just it was kind of a small suburb when we lived there, and that's where I grew up. I went to Aurora Central High and lived in a wonderful neighborhood. We had so much fun. We played all the time and had a lot of fun, and I think that's what I remember most about the neighborhood. Were the neighbors.
You finished high school there? Graduated
I did.
high school there?
I did. I was a pretty good student. I was so surprised when I received the award for National Honor Society in my junior year, because usually that's for seniors, and I got it when I was a junior. So I was just thrilled that I was able to get that. And it was faculty voted on it. You know, we knew nothing about it. Students knew nothing about it. So that was really one of the surprises of my life that made me feel really good.
Yeah.
In the summer, I learned so much about how to work. And I got a job at this motel cleaning room. I was the only high school student working there. And then 3 others came over because they found out I got a job, so they were working there. So it was kind of fun. We were all working together. But 6 a.m. to 12 noon, and it was hard work.
Your father was in manufacturing?
No, he was in sales with Packard.
The Packard?
And they went out of business. So he applied for a job. He didn't think he would get it. So he applied for a job with the Denver Transit Company, where he was hired as a bus driver. So he drove a bus for about 25 years. And he also did tours. You know, the bus company did tours up into the mountains for skiing.
And your mother, she was a homemaker, or did she also work outside the home?
Well, she stayed with my sister and me until we were in high school. And then she went to work at a grocery store, and she would stock the non-food items.
Okay.
And there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they're very hard to stock, so she did that. And she would go to work in the morning at about really early, about 5 in the morning, get off, about 12, and then we would be home, at 1 or 2. So a parent was always home. She was always home when we were growing up, which was nice.
Yeah.
One thing she would do every year, she would, and I would help her, and my sister would help her. And what we would do is we'd go around the house. It was a small house. We'd go around the house and paint it. We would chip off where the paint was, chipping off. We wouldn't paint the whole house. We'd chip off the paint as far as it would go. Then we'd paint it. So I would usually get up on the ladder. And I'll never forget this. I was doing a pretty good job of scraping, and they said, okay, I need the paint. My mom gave me the paint. I put it up on the ladder, and I was up pretty high. I knocked it off, and so the paint landed on her head.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm not kidding. I'll never forget that. I can't remember how she got the paint out.
Oh, my gosh.
But can you imagine a big bucket of paint on your head? I don't know how she got it off. I think I ran to the neighbors. I got out of the way.
What path did your life take after high school?
After high school, I went to Colorado State University and worked on my bachelor's degree. And I think I had at least 6 different majors. Every other, I was switching all over the place. So I ended up wanting to study psychology because I didn't understand myself. I thought, who am I? I have no idea. So I took psychology. And it helped me. I really liked it. But then I also thought, I need to have something practical. What am I going to do with this degree? So I switched from psychology to social science. And then that's how I could get a teaching degree. So I took social science and education so I could teach. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach.
And then somewhere along the line, spirituality came into your life.
Yeah, I got married right after I graduated. I graduated in 3 years. I took summers and large numbers of classes, almost double the load. So I graduated 2.5 quarters early. And
wow.
Yeah, so I graduated. And
in the social sciences.
Social sciences and education.
Okay.
And social science is a great major because I learned so much about so many things that I really enjoyed it. It covered philosophy, it covered sociology, anthropology, American history, a lot of things. But it was, a broad overview of, and I think we even had a geology class. I was not a good college student. I didn't study that much.
But you still managed to graduate
I
early.
graduated, but I didn't study that much. I would open a book and I would look at it and I would say, okay, what are the questions? And that would be about it. But there was one class that really grasped my imagination that was taught by Dr. Nathan. It's an American history class. And what grabbed me in that class was he said, he was teaching from Baird's history. It was just a new way of looking at how our country was formed. And Baird proposed the thesis that we are, our founding fathers were really businessmen. They did not have any notion of democracy or equality or liberty. Those were words that came from other wordsmiths, but they were really entrepreneurs. And I said, huh? I thought they were, we learned in high school that they were, democracy was their center point and they were trying to make it work, and that's not the way it was at all. And so that just really grasped me. I thought, wow, that is good.
Oh,
that's
okay.
interesting. I want to know more about that. But I didn't go the American history route. Instead, it was the philosophy class that grabs me. And it was in particular when we were dealing with the ancient thinkers, Socrates, Plato, I just was fascinated with their thinking. So I started going to chapel, not to worship, but I had questions. And so the chaplain was really smart. He gave me a book, Letters and Papers from Prison by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And that did it. I said, I have to know more about what this world of theology is all about. He was a theologian, German theologian, and he had the opportunity to stay in the United States when Hitler was rising, and he chose not to. And so he went back to Germany, and he was actually part of the underground, and at the same time teaching. And what he did was he was part of the conspiracy to assassinate Hitler. And he was jailed. I think he was in jail for maybe a year. And just before the war ended, I think it was a week before the war ended, they executed him. They hung him. And he wrote so much about what that experience was like, being in jail, and what that did to his thinking about who God is and who he is and who his enemies are. And his enemies weren't his enemies. He saw them as human beings. And he forgave them for what they were doing to him, even as he was ready to be hung.
Wow.
Yeah, so that really moved me. I thought, all this is coming together, and I have to know more. My curiosity was just bursting. I just had to know more about what this was all about.
And this came about in the period after you'd already achieved your bachelor's?
It was during it. It was towards the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
After you graduated early with your bachelor's, and you were married by then, what path did your life take?
So after I graduated, married, and my husband went to Vietnam.
Oh.
And so he was there 15 months. And in that time, I couldn't sit still. So I was in Denver, and I decided to go to Iliff School of Theology. ILIFF, Iliff School of Theology, a Methodist school. And I was raised Presbyterian, so I didn't know what I was doing there. But it was a seminary that was about 10 miles from our house, and I was living with my parents. So I decided to go, and I got accepted, which surprised me. And then I was just, I didn't look back. It was amazing what I was learning, and I loved it, everything I was learning, and my life changed. I did a 180-degree turn. My life changed significantly.
What is it that you were learning that affected you that way?
I think it was more what I was learning about myself, as well as what this symbol, God, meant. I didn't know. I didn't understand it, and I kept wondering. I was curious. So that started me on a journey. And I remember Dr. Potoff was a professor who taught theology, and he taught process theology, which I won't tell you about. Which I just
we don't have enough time.
Yeah, we don't have time, but it was fascinating. Anyway, that even drove me deeper into wanting to know more, and so I had to inquire, what do I do after this? Because I was coming to the end of my Master of Divinity work, and I said, well, is there anything? Well, yeah, you can get a doctorate if you choose to do that. And I said, wow. And so
So you chose to do that?
I did. 2 professors helped me figure out where I could go. We looked at several different places. And so I wanted to go west. I didn't want to go east. So it was the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. I said, oh, great place to go. Wow.
Because this was in the
Yeah, it was right after.
70s, or
It was, I was there in 72. So it was right after this free speech movement. I loved it. Oh my. It was so exciting.
and after receiving your doctorate,
Right.
where are we now? Where did you go after
Okay,
that?
after my doctorate, you interview, of course. And so I had a couple of interviews. One of them was at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington. And so they really liked me. They invited me. They said I would be the first woman teaching in the religion department. I thought, well, that'll be interesting. And I kind of liked the faculty. I liked the students. So I went there. And after, I guess it was 6 months, I got an invitation to interview at Princeton Theological Seminary. And I thought, wow, that would be nice. So they flew me out there, and I was the only woman. There were some students that forced them to invite a woman to be interviewed. And so there were very few of us then. And so they invited me, and there were 3 men that they interviewed, and I'll never forget it. With these 6, 7, 8 male professors sitting around you, asking you questions that, I tried to answer, but they didn't have anything to do with either my dissertation or how I would teach or anything. It was really confusing. So I told the women who were the ones who wanted me to come out there, I said, that was strange. And they agreed. Anyway, so I didn't get it, and I went back, and then I decided that there was this opportunity back in Berkeley at Pacific School of Religion, so I decided to take it. And it was an administrative position that I really found interesting, because I was just going to take that until I could find a really good job in the Bay Area. So, but I loved administration. I was shocked. I thought to myself, why do you like to shuffle papers? It was more than shuffling papers. It was really interesting. I was responsible for educating pastors in the field. I was in charge of their continuing education. So I had to find out from them what they needed. And then I got to go out and find the people who could teach it. So I got to hire faculty, and then I learned how to market. I had 1 or 2 people who were really good marketers who helped me figure out how to do that, how to set up a catalog for a summer catalog. And I had to work collaboratively with 9 other seminaries, which wasn't easy. So I learned a lot of skills, by being an administrator. So I really enjoyed that. And I was doing some part-time teaching. I was there 14 years.
Oh.
And then I was recruited to go to Duke Divinity School, which is kind of the starship for Methodism. So I said, wow, East Coast and Duke, and I got a good salary. And so I drove out there with my dogs and my mom, who drove with me. I mean, she rode with me, and bought a house and was all set and ready to go. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the South.
The South, so where are we? Where is that?
Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. It was culture shock. The whole year and a half I was there, 2 years I was there, I was really surprised. I'd never been on the East Coast, never been to the South. I didn't like it. I was so embarrassed. It was a passive-aggressive culture.
Passive-aggressive culture towards women,
Oh, you
towards minorities.
Yes, yeah. Having come from Berkeley and then going to, yeah, just think about it. And the way blacks were treated, I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
And I had this wonderful program ready to go. It was for Vietnamese families who in Hmong, who had just arrived in that area, and they were doing, the grunt work, in crop work, and they needed some education the pastors who were teaching them needed education about how to inform these folks that they were being abused, that it is basically their civil rights. And so I was setting up a program for that to happen in the Catholic Church, in the Methodist Church, and Presbyterian in that area. And a new boss came in, and he cut it. He didn't like it. So I said, okay. So
And did you
that did it.
decide to leave
I decided to leave. I
North
said,
Carolina then?
yeah, I did. I went back to Berkeley, and I'd always wanted to start my own business. I don't know why. I felt independent. So I started a headhunting company called Employment Work. And, and it was going great for about 3 years, and then I either had to invest like $300,000 in it for software and computers and all that stuff, or I had to give it up. And so I decided, I'm giving it up. It's hard work. I didn't, it was really hard work. And so I said, I can find something else to do. I let go of my company. I sold my house. Now, where do I want to go? So I said, I want to check out Ashland. And so I just checked it out and stayed.
How soon after that did you
It was about a
start
year.
your teaching career?
It was
at
about a
SLU?
year. I wanted to work at the university, and I figured I could find some way to work there, either administration or because of my administrative background, or teaching, and I wanted to teach. And so they had this opportunity to teach in what was called consortium, where you teach new students, incoming students, how to think. I said, I'd love that. And then 2 years after I was in it, they decided we could have content courses. So that's when I decided to start teaching ethical thinking for the 21st century. So the purpose of the class was basically to ask questions of students, to enable them to identify their values and those values that they make their decisions on. So I had to really push them. And the way I did that was by having case studies. And one of them was this. Are you ready? Okay, we have this situation where we have 5 people who need organ transplants. And they're going to die if they don't get them. And we have this gentleman. His name is Bill. And Bill is perfectly healthy, but he's asocial. He has no friends, no family, no pets. He just goes to work, goes home, goes to work, goes home. So what do you think about killing Bill to save these 5 people? Why not kill Bill and save 5 people? Would you do that? And if you would, why? And if not, why? So those were the kinds of questions I would pose to them. And if they had said, oh, no, I'm not going to kill him. I say, well, why not? And they said, well, I would never take a life. And I said, well, if you don't kill him, then you're killing 5 people because you're not enabling them, to live, because all they need is an organ from him. And what is he contributing to society? Zip. And then on the other hand, how can you take the life of a person? I mean, that makes you a killer. So how could you do that? These 5 people, for some reason, whatever it might be, find themselves at death's doorstep. But that's their situation. You don't take someone else's life to give life like that. So I would make them as uncomfortable as I could. So that was the fun part. I'd make them uncomfortable as I could. So they had to think. That's all I cared about. I didn't care what they decided or upon what they based their decision, but as long as they would think, that's all I wanted them to do. There was one text in particular, 21st Century Ethics, that was really, really good. And it boiled down the classical arguments for ethics into families of values that really help students understand what they were. So if they say, I believe in human life, I'll say, well, what does that mean? I'd say, well, I believe that you can't take a person's life. And I would say, well, wait a minute, what is a person? How would you define a person? And then we would get into the values values all based on personhood, and that was fascinating because you have to define what a person is. Yeah, it was fun.
And how long did you teach then that?
I taught that 14 years. I taught 16 years at SOU.
I would like to ask you, because you said something early on about you didn't know who you were. You were
That's right.
confused, and I'm wondering where along this journey did you discover who
Me.
you were?
I discovered that I am who I am, and I discovered that at Isle School of Theology. It was an amazing transformation for me.
This has been a focus on Carol Voisin, and we have been able to learn more about Carol's early years and how she has grown into the woman that she is today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.